But I'll start with a simple question, and then I'll wait till the slides get there. So I'm going to play a simple game called Which is Tastier? So I'm going to ask you about two things, give you two contestants. I'm going to ask you to think which is tastier, not which you wish was tastier, which should be tastier, but which is actually tastier, okay? So the first one is a delicious head of broccoli. Now, it turns out broccoli has lots of nutrition, good things, just like a fruit and vegetable should, lots of fiber, also lots of good vitamin C. So keep an image of broccoli in your mind. If I had my slides, one would be up here. And the second is a cheeseburger. Now think about your favorite cheeseburger, whatever cheeseburger version you'd have. Mine would have bacon on top with a little bit of grilled onions and blue cheese, but you can pick your own version of the cheeseburger. So not which of those do you think should be tastier, not which you wish was tastier, but which is actually tastier. Oh, there we go. Fantastic. Thank you guys in the back. And that's the clicker. Great. Okay, so there's the broccoli and there's the cheeseburger. Now we get to vote. So how many for the cheeseburger? Almost everybody. Okay, how many for the broccoli? Okay, a handful. You guys are either vegetarians or you're liars, one or the other. But my point here is very simple. Even though we know we should do one of these, even though we wish we ate more broccoli, we know that vegetables are good for us, the cheeseburger's tastier. Particularly late at night, particularly when we're hungry, our stomach, our tongue finds it tastier. And I'd like to ask the same question about our marketing. Right? Using that same analogy, by understanding not how people's tongues work or how their stomachs work, but how their minds work, how can we make our initiatives, our content, our ideas tastier? We all know examples like the Ice Bucket Challenge and other things that go viral, right? Hot topic, very exciting. How can we do that? How, by understanding why people talk about and share things, can we get people to pass on our content? And so specifically, I'll talk today about how we can deepen customer engagement, how we can generate more buzz, and how we can help our products and services catch on. But before I do that, one more question. So here are three products or brands that I think every one of you probably knows pretty well. The first is Disney World, the self-described place where dreams come true. The second is Honey Nut Cheerios, the delicious breakfast cereal. And the third is Scrubbing Bubbles. Does everyone know Scrubbing Bubbles? It's a bathroom cleaner. Some of us may be too familiar with it. If you had to guess, which of these three things do you think gets more word of mouth? Is it Disney, is it Cheerios, or is it Scrubbing Bubbles? Okay, I heard some bubbles. How many for bubbles? Okay. I heard somebody else for Disney. How many for Disney? Okay, looks like about 50% for Disney, about 30% for bubbles. How many for Cheerios? Okay, maybe 10 or 15%, a couple you didn't vote. I'd like to point out just two things from this little exercise. First, it was a little harder than the cheeseburger and the broccoli. That one was easy. I think many of you sat there going, well, I have no idea which one of these three gets more word of mouth. And unless you work for Disney or you work for Cheerios or Scrubbing Bubbles, the answer actually doesn't matter, right? Because you don't care which of the three wins. What you care about is the why. If we don't understand why certain products and brands get talked about more, how can we expect people to talk about and share our stuff? Which brings me to the second point. So I think Disney was the top vote getter. How many for Disney? Excellent guess. Unfortunately, it's wrong. Scrubbing Bubbles, the runner-up. That makes more sense. Bubbles, great guess also. Also wrong. The answer is Cheerios, the one that the fewest of us guessed. And so I think that points out that our intuition about word of mouth might be wrong. There's a lot of hype and excitement around word of mouth, around social media, and around these technologies. But if we don't know how to use them effectively, we cannot get people talking and sharing our stuff. We have to understand the underlying science. Why do people talk about and share some things rather than others? And so that's a long-winded introduction to a title slide, as was nicely mentioned. I'm Jonah Berger. I'm a marketing professor at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. I spent the last 10 years studying this stuff. What I'll do in the sort of 25 minutes we have together is give you a brief tour of some parts of my recent New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestseller, Contagious. I would love to be a social media guru. Apparently, all you need to do to be a social media guru is have a theory, and you get to assume it's correct. That sounds like a great job. Unfortunately, it's not mine. My job is to look into the science. And so we've spent the last 10 years studying this stuff. A lot of it's really boring. Some of it's more interesting. What I'm not going to do today is present the boring stuff. I'm not going to put up tables with lots of statistics. All the research is in the back of the book. You can find all the papers at jonahberger.com. Today I'll tell stories, because as we'll talk about, stories are the currency of conversation. But underneath all these stories is a lot of rigorous academic research that I encourage you to dig into if you want to know how we got to our conclusions. So I teach at the Wharton School. Wharton students sort of believe what their professors say, but if a major consulting firm says it, suddenly they believe it must be true, and everybody take notes. So this is my sort of obligatory consulting firm quote for the day. I think everyone's probably realized this already, right? Word of mouth is much more impactful than traditional advertising. In fact, some research shows that $1 spent on word of mouth goes 10 times as far as a dollar spent on traditional advertising. Any idea why? Why word of mouth is so much more impactful? When you say trust, what do you mean? Okay, there's that. You don't trust ads? Why not?
Why would I trust ads?
Yeah. I just want to follow this to the logical conclusion. But simple. You think they're trying to sell you something, right? You know they're self-interested. You know they're self-interested. You know they're trying to sell you something. Yeah. And so I think, right, this is the simple intuition that we all have. Yet somehow we think our ads are different. Right? Consumers don't believe other companies' ads, but our ads are different. When they're seeing our ads, they'll somehow magically believe what we have to say. My favorite example of this, does everyone remember Joe Montana? Famous quarterback Joe Montana. Before there was Colin Kaepernick, there was Steve Young. Before Steve Young, there was Joe Montana. Joe Montana was in an ad last year for these Skechers shoes called Shape-Ups. And I don't know if you're familiar with Shape-Ups. Seems like you guys are. For those who don't know, they're shoes that you wear around that are supposed to tone your butt. So somehow magically you wear these shoes and you get a toned rear end. I am not, by the way, wearing Shape-Ups, so in case you're wondering. Imagine you see Joe Montana, famous quarterback, in an ad for shoes that are supposed to tone your rear end. What would you think? Right? I remember thinking, wow, things must be really bad in the Joe Montana household. He's got to owe somebody a lot of money, right? And this is what consumers do, as your colleague pointed out, every time they see an ad. They react against it. They push back. Ads always say we have the best service ever, we make the best products. You've never seen an ad that says we have the 17th best service, right? And because of that, people don't know whether to believe it or not. So the first is trust. We trust our friends. The second is a little more nuanced. That's the targeting benefit of word of mouth. How do we find the right people that might like what we have to offer? The big benefit of word of mouth is customers do the targeting for us. If we can turn customers into advocates rather than us having to figure out who might like what we have to offer, they do the work for us. A great example of this happened to me a couple of years ago. I got 2 copies of the same book in the mail. Say it's the same book. Why would they send you 2 copies? It was a publisher. They wanted me to assign it to my class, but they all said, hey, Professor Berger, we think you'll like this book. We think you'll also know someone else who will like this book. Pass the second copy on to them. And that's the first simple hack I'm going to talk about today, right? Referred customers have 20% higher customer lifetime value than people that come off the street. Why? Because someone else has figured out who in their social network is most likely to like what you have to offer. Right? If you don't have kids, no one's going to tell you about a great website for baby clothes. They're going to tell someone else in their network who would like that information. So if we can turn these customers into advocates, they'll do the targeting for us. Okay, how do we do that? So often when we think about word of mouth, we think online. We think about technologies like Facebook, like Twitter, like LinkedIn, like blogs, the like. If you had to guess, out of all word of mouth, from 100% all the way down to 0, what percent would you guess is online? 20, okay. Somebody else? 50%? Okay. The answer is 7. 7% of all word of mouth is online. Is that number higher among young people? Yes, it is. It's like 11% among young people. And I point that out because I think when we think about word of mouth, we think that means social media. It doesn't. Most word of mouth is offline. That doesn't mean social media isn't important. That doesn't mean social media isn't a great tool and a useful tool, but it's only one of the channels through which word of mouth travels through. And the problem by focusing so much on the technology, it's easy to jump on the bandwagon, other people are on it, we should do it too, is we forgot about the psychology. Because some of these sites come and go. Remember Foursquare, how that was going to change the way that business was done forever? And then it sort of didn't, right? Instagram, will it continue to be popular in 5 years? I don't know. But what's more important than what technology are people using is why are they sharing in the first place? I do lots of consulting with various companies. This summer I was doing one of the big electronics manufacturer, 9 million Twitter followers. They're very proud of that fact. Look how many people we have following us. And you look at how many people share their content, and it's often under 100. 52 out of 9 million people are sharing something that you post. Right? It's not enough to just post things. You have to understand why people talk and share. And so I spent the last 10 years studying this stuff. We've looked at thousands of pieces of online content, tens of thousands of brands, and millions of purchases across the United States. We analyzed 6 months of New York Times articles. We analyzed over 20,000 brands and how much word of mouth they get over time, both online and offline. It's not random, it's not luck, and it's not chance. There's a science behind why people talk and share. In fact, as we'll talk about today, there are 6 key, what I call steps. Each of those stands for a psychological driver of sharing, social currency, triggers, emotion, public, practical value, and stories. If you're paying attention, you'll notice that steps is spelled incorrectly. That's because I am not very clever. So I spent a while with these ideas. I could not come up with a better acronym. So we're stuck with STEPS. But today I'll talk at least about social currency. I'll talk about triggers. I'll probably wrap up with stories if we have time. But it'll give you some of the ideas of some of the research we found. And there's also copies of the book in the back if you're interested. And I'm happy to answer questions as well. So let me start with a story of what else than a hot dog restaurant. And this is a New York story, so it's a good one for here. So imagine after the conference, you're walking around, you make your way over to the Lower East Side with some colleagues, and you decide you're hungry. You need to get a bite to eat. Well, it's Friday night. You notice a big place with a hot dog-shaped sign with the words "Eat Me" written on it in what looked like mustard. Say to yourself, wow, I haven't had a hot dog in a while. I'll check this place out. So you walk down a flight of stairs into a restaurant called Criff Dogs. Now, if you like hot dogs, you will be in heaven. Criff Dogs has every hot dog you can imagine. From a good morning hot dog with bacon, eggs, and cheese, rough on the stomach, but interesting nonetheless, a hot dog with green onion and pineapple, and a traditional New York-style water dog with just ketchup and mustard. So you're sitting there, you finish up your hot dog, when you notice something unusual in the corner of the room. Almost looks like a phone booth, like one of those things that Clark Kent might jump into to change into Superman. So just for fun, slide open the door and walk inside. It's pretty crowded in there. It's a phone booth after all. But on the wall, you'll see something you probably haven't seen in a very long time. Remember rotary dial phones? You have to stick your finger in just for fun. There's actually a rotary dial phone inside this thing. Stick your finger in the number 3, go around in a circle, and hold that phone up to your ear. It'll actually start ringing. It'll go ring, ring. Then someone will pick up the other line. And they'll ask you whether you have a reservation. Reservation? You're in a phone booth inside of a hot dog restaurant. What could you possibly have a reservation for? But if you're lucky, and they happen to have space, or a friend of yours made a reservation, the back of this phone booth will open, and you'll be led into a secret bar called Please Don't Tell. Now, Please Don't Tell has violated a number of what we'd call traditional laws of marketing, right? No sign on the street, no sign inside the restaurant. They did everything they can to make them difficult to find. Yet every day they're full. 3 p.m., phone lines open up. By 3:30, all the seats are gone. Right, so if you want to go, you might want to get on it quickly. You have to hit redial again and again and again trying to get through. I finally got in after 2 weeks of trying on a Monday night, the least popular night of the week. So what did they do right? What did they do to make themselves so successful? Well, they made themselves a secret. And let me tell you a little secret about secrets. Think about the last time someone told you something, and then they told you not to tell anybody else. What's the first thing you then did with that information? You told somebody, right? Because having access to information that not everyone else knows makes you look smart and makes you look in the know. Gives you what I'll call social currency. Just like the car we drive and the clothes we wear, the things we say and the things we share affect how other people see us. So one way to get people talking about our products, our brands, our services is to make them look good. Because the better we make them look, the more we give them that social currency, the more they'll pass it on and the more we'll get to come along for the ride. So let me give you just a couple examples of this. So I have a friend, her name is Carla, and this is a picture of her car. And I want to see how much you can guess about her solely based on the fact that this is her car. So you had to guess, for example, how old might you guess that she is? 42. How many would say between 35 and 45? Almost everybody. Okay, does she have kids? Yeah, the kids play sports? Yeah, what sport do they play? Okay, do we all know Carla? No, but we made these inferences because choices communicate information. Car we drive, also the clothes we wear. I thought a lot about what to wear to come see you guys today. I've been told I have a young face. Sometimes people ask if I'm 16 years old. I'm no longer 16 years old. It was a good year of my life, but I'm not there anymore. So I wear a sport coat to show that I'm mildly professional, so you at least think I'm 18 or 20 or some in my young 20s. Because I recognize if I showed up here wearing shorts and a t-shirt, you probably wouldn't take me seriously, because you'd make inferences about me based on what I'm wearing. Same with what people talk about and share. Some people love sharing sports information, right? They want to be the first person to know about a trade. Some people love sharing financial service information. Some people love sharing recipes. Some people love talking about technology. What they talk about is a signal of who they are, just like what they talk about and share. So how can we give them desired signals? Well, in the book I talk about 4 ways. I'll talk about 2 here briefly. The first is just to make people feel like insiders. How can you make them feel smart and in the know? Like they're special, like they're not like everybody else. Please Don't Tell, Hidden Bar did a great job of this. But Coke has also recently done a great job of this, right? They took this unused real estate on their bottle and made it a conversation piece. Right? You see your name on a bottle of Coke, you're going to buy it. You see someone else's name, you're going to buy it for them. People talk about, oh, have you found your name? I wonder what the weirdest names are. They created a conversation piece out of something that is basic and honestly pretty boring. Right? How? Because they make people feel special. Right? You're not just one out of everybody else. You're one of special people that have their name on this particular bottle, right? Making people feel like they're different from others. The second way is to find the inner remarkability. And I think at this point, some of you might be saying, okay, I get it. If I'm a hidden bar, this is great. But what if I sell something really boring? Something that might not be naturally remarkable or exciting, right? So what's a product or a service that might not be easy, you think, to get word of mouth about? Life insurance, okay, good one. What else? Banking, okay, I've done a bunch of work in the financial services. We can talk about that in a couple minutes. Others, you could say toilet paper, dish soap, a dishwasher, maybe a blender. Let me show you an oldie but goodie, how a company got over 200 million views for videos about blenders. Oh, and we don't have the sound connected. Well, that's going to be disappointing. Can we connect the sound in the back? And if not, we're going to skip this.
Will it blend?
There we go.
That is
okay.
the question.
How many of you have seen one of these, by the way? Okay, a couple people. Good.
I love my new iPhone. It does everything. But will it blend? That is the question. Let's find out. I think I'm going to push the smoothie button. I smoke. Don't breathe this. Now, you fans on YouTube have asked me to blend an iPhone, so I did it. But I have another. I'm going to put this on eBay.
So how many of you found this at least a little bit remarkable? Be honest, like at least a little. I saw someone say with their mouth like wide open the entire time. This video has 10 million views. The set has over 200 million. They do it for various different things. Sales go up over 700% when these videos come out. And that's great. That's a remarkable sales increase. Anyone would be happy with that. But that to me is not the most remarkable part about this. The most remarkable part about this is they did this for one of the least exciting products ever, right? A blender. Many of you have no idea even what type of blender you have at your house. You're going to go home and poke the little thing and go, can you do that little blender, right? This got people talking about something that we wouldn't think people talk about a lot. Life insurance, financial services, right? Toilet paper, any of these things we can get people to talk about if we find the inner remarkability. Because it's not things that certain things are born remarkable and others are doomed to fail, right? We have to think about what makes it surprising, novel, or interesting, and how can we show it to people rather than tell it to people. Right? It's not enough to tell people the attributes. If they said we make a really powerful blender, probably about 0 people would share that, right? But they showed them rather than told them. And if we have time, I'll come back to that at the end by talking about stories. Let me talk next about triggers. And I think of the 6, social currency is the most fun. I think it's easy and pretty intuitive. Triggers, you'll understand when you hear it, but I don't think almost nobody applies it now. And so I think it's a very important idea. So to talk about this, do you guys know the Hump Day ad from last year? Okay. So this is the popular ad, Geico. How happy are people who save money with Geico? Happier than a camel on Hump Day. This ad is not that funny. Geico did not spend more money showing it than other ads, yet it is the second most shared ad of last year. And not among insurance ads, which I agree with your colleague, are not always the most exciting, of all ads, period. So of all ads, this is the second most shared, right behind the Dove ad. So why are so many people sharing this clip? Why are so many people sharing this content? Well, I'm a data guy, so I worked with a company called Unruly. This is what the share data looks like over time for that ad. So you see a spike in attention, and then it goes down. And then another spike, and then it goes down. Another spike, and then it goes down. If you look closer, the spikes aren't random. They're 7 days apart. And if you look even closer, you'll notice, as you figured out, they're every Wednesday, right? It's colloquially known Hump Day. Right? This video is equally good or bad every day of the week. It's good or bad on Monday, it's good or bad on Tuesday, good or bad on Wednesday. The video doesn't change. But Wednesday rolls around, and it provides a ready reminder, what psychologists would call a trigger, to make people think about it and talk about it and share it. Because if something is top of mind, it's much more likely to be tip of tongue. Right? Psychologists did a great study in the grocery store. Some days they played French music, and some days they played German music. And they look at what people buy. And they found on days they played French music, sales of French wine went up. And on days they played German music, sales of German wine went up. Now, did the music change what wine people liked? No. It reminded them that the wine existed. Right? Too often in the marketing space, we think of, well, how much do people like us? As long as people like us, they'll purchase from us and we'll be fine. But there are lots of products and brands that people like and they never buy. Because if they're not thinking about them, they're not going to go out there and purchase. Right? We have to think about how can we make ourselves not just liked, but top of mind. So let me spend a couple minutes talking about this. So this is some more data. This is word-of-mouth data for Cheerios by time of day. What do you notice about when people are talking about Cheerios? Breakfast, when they're eating Cheerios, right? Notice how it shifted to the right on the weekend. Any idea why? Wake up later. This is not rocket science. One reason people talk about a product or a service is they've just used it, which is great news if people use your product or service every day. But look what happens, right? Once they're done using it, they move on to other things. This is the problem with Disney World. It's a really engaging experience, but how many of you have been, not ever, but this year, to Disney World? 1, 2, 3, maybe you're great parents. For the younger folks, maybe you got married there, or you're just weird. I think those are the 3 reasons that people go to Disney World. If you don't have kids and you didn't get married there, why are you going to Disney? It's a great experience, but nothing reminds people and keeps them talking about it, right? Whereas Cheerios, people eat it off and they see it in the store. You might say, okay, well, that's great if I'm used frequently. What if I'm not? Are there other triggers as well? Well, there are. So if I said peanut butter and blank, you might think of the word jelly. And if I said rum and the word blank, you might think of Coke. Notice that peanut butter is like a little advertisement for jelly. It's almost like jelly should pay peanut butter a kickback for every time peanut butter's around. Because if peanut butter's around, jelly doesn't have to remind you it exists. Peanut butter does all the work for jelly, right? This is why Michelob has that old slogan, weekends are made for Michelob. They wanted people to think about the beer when the weekend rolls around. Corona's done the same thing with the beach. I challenge you to go on a beach vacation and not think about Corona. It's impossible, right? You're lying in the sand, you got your sunscreen on, suddenly Corona comes to mind. And it always has what in it? A lime, right? The beach is Corona's trigger. Every time you see the beach, you think of Corona. The beach is Corona's peanut butter. And so I'd ask you very simply is, what is your peanut butter? What's the thing that's going to remind people of you even when you're not around? Because you can market to people. You can call them, you can send them email, you can send them direct mail, you can remind them, you can advertise, which all costs a lot of money, is all very annoying, and encourages people to react against it. Or if you can link yourself to something in the environment, every time they see that thing, they'll think of you. Right? Kit Kat did a great job of this a few years ago. Sales were down by about 30%. So they came out with the slogan, Kit Kat and coffee, break's best friend. Having a coffee break, have a Kit Kat. Think about coffee, think about Kit Kat. Coffee and Kit Kat and coffee, best friends forever. Right? Now, why is coffee a really good trigger if you're Kit Kat? People drink a lot of it, right? If you're going to link yourself to something frequent. But it's not just frequency. Think about reusable grocery bags, for example. How many of you have reusable grocery bags somewhere in your house? Everybody, right? How many of you use them every time you go to the grocery store? Much fewer. Think about why. Why do we forget reusable grocery bags? Or alternatively, what are reusable grocery bags? Peanut butter. When do we remember reusable grocery bags? When you get to the store, right? Which last time I checked is too late. You get to the store, you're really proud of yourself, you go, oh, I forgot my bags. You're not going to go back home and get the bags. It's like a customer thinking about you after they've just bought from a competitor, right? It's not only right thinking about you frequently, it's who do you want to be triggered, when do you want to be triggered, and what is in the environment around that time. Linking yourself to those sort of things will make you come to mind more often and be more likely to be chosen. Okay, I am almost out of time, so I'm not going to talk about emotion. Emotion's all about when you care, you share. I'll give you a little spoiler alert. It's not that positive emotions increase sharing and negative decrease. It's actually more complicated than that, but there's a whole bunch of science there. I don't have time for public, so I'll skip that too. I won't talk about practical value, and I actually will skip stories also. I will just show you one more example. And the idea here is how can we build stories that carry messages along for the ride? So you think about Blendtext, Will It Blend? It's not just a really engaging piece of content, right? Too often we say, okay, we'll make something really funny, but the brand doesn't come along for the ride. Or you can't tell that story about Blendtec without realizing it's a really powerful blender. Let me show you one more example of this. It's called Panda Cheese, and I want you to notice what they do with their ads.
Please.
Can I make you a cheese sandwich? No, I'm not hungry.
Just you know why you and I
يتقلهاش.
Never say no to Panda.
Good
morning, good morning.
يلا يلا عشان الفطور.
I got your Panda cheese for breakfast.
No, والله
No
ماليش
thanks, I
نفس.
don't feel well.
Just you know why. Why you and I will by and by. Why you and I
باندا
Never
ما
say no to
يتقلهاش.
Panda. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip the last two, but they're very funny. You can check them out on my website, and they're also, on the internet. They're great. Let me just wrap up. Today we didn't talk about all 6 of the steps. We got to a couple of them. But essentially here, it's not random, it's not luck, right? There's a science behind why people talk and share. Social currency, how can you make people feel smart and in the know, like they're special, like they're not like everyone else? Triggers, the more top of mind something is, the more tip of tongue it will be. Emotion, when we care, we share, but certain emotions are more likely to drive sharing than others. Some actually decrease sharing. Public, easier to see, easier to imitate. Practical values, all about useful information. How do we frame numbers to make them more impactful? And last but not least, stories. When people put their kids to bed at night, right, nobody tells bedtime facts. We tell bedtime stories. And so why do we think that communicating through facts is the right way to get people to pay attention to what we're doing? Right, what we need to do is figure out what that message that we want to communicate, but how can we build a story, what I'll call a Trojan horse story, that carries the moral or the information along for the ride. Just like Will It Blend did, right, with the blender. It's a very powerful blender. You realize that from watching the video. Or Panda cheese. I would love to say that I showed it to you just because it's funny, but it's not just funny. I challenge you to tell anyone else about that ad and not mention a particular word. And that word is Panda, which is exactly the brand that they want you to remember. They didn't just do something funny, right? They did something that's on message that carries the brand for a ride, just like what a Trojan horse does, a story or a vessel carrier of information. Just 2 next things from me. I know today's been a lot of useful information. One, and I saw many of you taking notes, so I'd like to sort of summarize here. One, what's your message? I work with all sorts of companies in a variety of different industries. Too often people say, hey, we need more word of mouth. It's too easy to jump on the bandwagon because other people are doing something. What is the message that you want people to communicate and why? Start there. Not just we want more word of mouth. What do we want people to talk about? How do we want people to talk about us? And then, how can we apply the steps to get people to talk and share? You don't need to do all 6 at once. You can pick off 1 at a time and apply each of them. Right? Use social currency. How can we make people feel special? What initiative can we do, online or offline, to make people share? Triggers, right? What can we do to find our peanut butter? What can we link ourselves to? And in case it's helpful, and I saw many of you taking notes already, but in case it helps, there's a workbook. It's just a free workbook up on my website, jonahberger.com/resources. We'll walk you through some questions to help you think about how to apply these ideas. I know for some of you this may be easy and ways you usually think about things. For others it may be more difficult. Either way, this workbook is a good tool to think through these ideas with your team. Because again, it's not random, it's not luck, and it's not chance. There's a science behind why people talk and share. It's really easy to follow the hype, but it's much harder to understand why people do what they do. But if we understand that science, we can craft more contagious content, we can build more effective messages and stories, and we can get our products and ideas to catch on. Thank you very much.